Now, more on those comments by the Prime Minister David Cameron that Tottenham Hotspur fans who use the word yid should not face prosecution. The club has a large number of supporters from the Jewish community, and despite warnings, many have started using the word in their own chants. Well, they've been using them for some time as a response to anti-Semitic taunts from some rival fans. Well, in an interview with the Jewish Chronicle, Mr. Cameron said this. He said there's a difference between Spurs fans self-describing themselves as yids and someone calling someone a yid as an insult. You have to be motivated by hate. Hate speech should be prosecuted, but only when it is motivated by hate. Well, let's get the views of Richard Ferrer, editor of the Jewish News. Very good to see you, Richard. Well, you've read the Prime Minister's comments, so where do you stand on them?
Well, from a legal perspective, I have absolutely no problem with David Cameron taking the side of Spurs fans. The FA have come out and said that there could be banning orders for fans chanting the word yid. Clearly, that's a ridiculous situation. My concern is a moral one. Is there a place for that word in football stadiums and in society at large? I think that using the excuse that it's a term that Tottenham fans own and therefore are entitled to use is spurious at best, and that because something is acceptable in a sports stadium doesn't make it acceptable in society at large.
Now, but are they trying to, I mean, the Spurs fans, I mean, they clearly are, they're trying to disarm it, aren't they? And it happens with a lot of people that are oppressed or victimised. They take the word, the forms of abuse that are used against them and use it themselves. And does that, in a way, nullify its effect?
I think it only encourages putting that word in an area like a football match, which is very emotional, lots of passions. It sparks a reaction from other fans. It's something that I think has no place, as I said, in society at large. So why we make excuses for it in a football context? I mean, just giving you an example as to why I find it so ridiculous that we're even having this conversation about whether a racial slur is acceptable in this social environment. Imagine at the Olympics last year, we had a Jewish athlete running around a track and people were using the Y word at him or her. It would seem incongruous, it would seem unacceptable.
But the Prime Minister isn't saying that. I mean, the Prime Minister accepts that, and then, you know, the full force of the law, if necessary, should come down there if it's used in hate. But this is peoples themselves appropriating it and not using it in that context. And we have seen that, haven't we? I mean, we've heard it all before. We've heard it in music with some black people using other words about themselves.
The problem is this whole debate is driven not by common sense but by blind loyalty to a football team. And when we take that out of the situation and we look at it in the cold light of day, I mean, N-words, P-words, they've all been taken out of the lexicon as much as they possibly can. We're never, ever going to get rid of them. But if we can start prescribing words like the Y word, I think that's a step in the right direction.
So how do you think this particular issue should be handled? You know what football fans are like. If you tell them to do something, they'll do the precise opposite. It seems that's what Tottenham Hotspur fans are doing. And having a bit of fun, to be honest, and saying, we'll chant what we want. Is the best way of dealing with this then, rather than coming down, you know, and kind of sending in the stewards and saying you're banned and you mustn't use that, to have a conversation with them and say, do you really know what this word means and what you're doing to make it more popular?
Well, you can educate people about what the history of the word is, going back centuries through immigration of Jews from Europe at the turn of the 20th century, but I'm not sure you're going to get a Spurs fan that interested in that sort of debate. What I'm most concerned about is overdoing the issue. The FA didn't do themselves any favours when they started to threaten banning orders. For Spurs fans, it's only going to encourage, and I think when Spurs play at the weekend, you're going to see it and hear it even louder. I have a problem with Spurs fans who are Jewish, and there's only a small proportion who wear it as a badge of honour. And feel there's some sort of pride in that, when in actual fact, as I said, it only provokes and causes discomfort amongst the Jewish community at large to a great extent, and also creates an environment that's hostile. It's not an environment that I think families want to involve themselves in when they go to a football match.
No, not pleasant, especially if you're taking children, as you say. But I mean, you know, there could be a legal minefield as well, couldn't there? I mean, if opposing fans come along and use the Y word in a hate sense and therefore would be subject to prosecution, and then you have Spurs fans. I mean, you could imagine, you know, defence lawyers having a bit of a ball with that.
Well, language at a football match is juicy enough without actually bringing in this hot term into the mix as well. And I don't necessarily blame opposing fans when it's allowed to be in the lexicon of football chants along with other Spurs chants, and the Y word is just used in that mix as a cocktail, then obviously people aren't going to appreciate the power and the baggage and the history that word actually carries.
I mean,
for many
you're
people.
right, aren't you, about, there's so many awful things said, even just foul language in football matches. I found it, I'm a pretty regular attender at a football ground, and I find that the best way of dealing with it seems to be a self-policing. The vast majority of people, particularly if they're taking their families along, they don't want to hear that kind of thing. You say, hey mate, come on, stop.
I go to football a lot myself, and I've been to a lot of sports events in America where there's a family atmosphere and an environment that encourages young people to enjoy and engage in sport. If you come to a football match from another country outside of Europe, because it's the same issue we have in Italy and Germany and Holland, it's not just a UK issue. But in America, I think they've got the right sort of idea in terms of it's a social environment and it's a pastime, whereas here, so it's a cauldron. And I think condoning the Y word, it's feeding the flames, and it's provoking more than it's creating any sort of solution.
It's really good to get your thoughts. Thanks for sharing your views with us, Ferrer there, editor of the Jewish News.